Hi everyone, Sam here, thanks for joining me. First of all, I just want to say thanks for all your lovely comments you left on my last video. It makes me really happy that you're enjoying my videos and that they're inspiring you to paint and that you're improving your painting skills. I mean, that's what it's all about, so thank you. So this is just a quick introduction to the main part of this video where I'll be showing you how to paint a mountain landscape but outdoors on location. Now, I love painting outdoors and I do it quite a lot because I find it really helps with my studio work. So if you've never tried painting outdoors, I'd really recommend you give it a try. It's definitely challenging, but it's really good fun, and as I say, it will improve your painting skills. But if you're happy being in the studio and you're an oil painter or an acrylic painter, you may still want to watch this video because a lot of the techniques and principles I use for painting out in the field are just as applicable in the studio, and I still talk about the colours I'm using and how to mix them, and the composition and the overall tonality of the scene that I'm painting. And also it's pretty cool when I reveal the painting at the end of the video and turn it round into the full sunlight and you sort of see it pop and come alive. But as I say, I think you might enjoy this video. As always, check the link below, there's some written notes that accompany this video. So before the main part of the video begins, I've just done a little mini 2-3 minute vlog where I just show the area that I'm painting in and make a few comments about painting outdoors. But if you just want to get into the main part of the video, maybe just fast forward it a couple of minutes. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. The art journey continues, quite literally. And man, what a beautiful day. So I'm out here in Glenorchy, New Zealand. It's about 45 minutes drive from where I live. And it's such a beautiful day that I just wanted to come outside and paint. And so painting outdoors, it's called plein air painting, it's a French word meaning to paint outside. I've always quite liked that plein air painting style ever since I first came across it, which was probably about 9 years ago when I first came to New Zealand. It's actually a local artist who lives up the road from here. I saw his paintings because he just paints outdoors and I just thought they were amazing, and I guess that sparked the idea. So in this video I'm going to show you how to paint this mountain landscape. Probably took me about, well, maybe 2-3 hours to paint it. I mean, the one thing with plein air painting is it does teach you to paint quickly, and actually I need to get quicker really, but yeah. I hope you enjoy this painting. It may look a bit dark in the video because whenever I'm painting outdoors I always have my canvas facing away from the light so it's in shadow, so it just helps with the colour mixing, and also I'm not getting any kind of glare off my canvas. So apologies for the fact that it does look a bit dark in the video, but if you click on the link below, there's written notes that accompany this video as well, and hopefully the photos are better, and of course I show you it at the end in the full sunlight, which is always the best part when you've done a plein air painting. I've got my ridiculous stupid cowboy hat on. Helps keep the sun out. It's all good. I'll show you the view I'm going to paint. Hang on, let me just flick this around. Oh, it's not working. Right, so I'm just wandering around, but I mean, this is a beautiful place. But anyway, this is a view of, I've actually already painted it, I'm making the video after, but yeah, this is the view, and I'll show you how to paint it. So this is my Strada easel. It's nice and small and compact, and it's made of aluminium as well, so it's pretty strong. So it mounts on my camera tripod, and I'll just pull this out. And then inside I've got 2 trays as well, which they just clip on the side here. And these are also the paint palettes. And then I can just put my canvas panel on like that. So this is the view I'm going to paint here in Glenorchy. I just really like the mountains and the pine trees there, and the broadleaf trees in the distance. It's not the perfect composition, as it often rarely is, so we'll have to make some changes in the painting, but that's not a problem. So I'm just going to lay out my colours here on the palette. I've got yellow oxide, burnt sienna, quinacridone magenta, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cobalt teal and phthalo green. So when I paint outdoors, I always have my canvas facing away from the light so it's in shadow. Just helps with colour mixing and not getting glare off it. I've also pre-prepared this canvas with a layer of burnt umber, and this just helps to warm up the painting as it comes through the paint layers, and it also helps with colour and tone as well. So I'm just sketching up my composition with burnt sienna mixed with liquid. And I'm just using a round brush. And I like these willows and poplar trees in the distance, so I want to include those in my painting. And then I'll put the pine tree up in the right corner here. So next I'm going to paint the mountain. And if you want to really add drama to a painting, or at least a mountain painting, having it quite close to the top gives the impression of great height. So in this, the mountain's going to be the focal image, the focal area of the painting, and then I've got these trees and this pine tree which will sort of lead the eye up towards it, and then also this little stream as well. So when I'm painting outdoors, I always want to look at where my shadows are first and which are the darkest ones, because I want to get all my shadows in first, and then it won't matter if the light changes. So looking at the pine trees in the distance, the shadows in there seem to be the darkest tones in the painting, so I'm going to put these in first, and then I can use that to gauge the rest of the tonality of the painting. So here I've just mixed burnt sienna with some ultramarine blue and a bit of phthalo green, so that's created a pretty dark value. And I'm using a number 6 flat brush, and to be honest, for plein air painting I just mostly use number 6 flat brushes. I prefer using bigger brushes for painting outdoors. Also gives you that nice loose feel to it as well. So in the foreground my shadows are going to be at their darkest. So now I've got my darkest tones in, I look at the landscape and look, where's the next tier of tone? So where's the next lightest tone? And it's these trees here in the midground. So I'll start painting in the shadows, and I'm just using burnt sienna with ultramarine blue and a tiny bit of quinacridone magenta and a little bit of titanium white. So as landforms recede into the distance, your shadows start getting lighter. So now looking at the landscape, the mountains are much further away, so the shadows not anywhere near as dark as the shadows in the trees in the foreground. So again, I've used the same colours I used in the midground, which is burnt sienna, ultramarine blue and a little bit of quinacridone magenta, but more titanium white. And I'll just test it here. So that should be pretty good. So I'll start blocking in these shadows. Using liquid when you're plein air painting is actually quite useful, because I usually find it's after about an hour or so it's already starting to dry, so it means you can go back and rework areas if you need to. Okay, for now that's pretty much my shadows and darkest tones added there. So next I'm going to move on to the sky. So now I'm just going to place a few clouds in here. This is just titanium white mixed with a bit of yellow oxide and burnt sienna. And next I'm painting the sky. And I mix ultramarine blue with cobalt blue and titanium white. And then just to vary the texture a little bit, sometimes I add a tiny bit of quinacridone magenta or cobalt teal as well. So I haven't got my darkest tones in the mountains. It actually helped with painting the sky, because the sky is actually tonally quite a lot lighter. Also means I can add some darker, richer blue in the top of it as well. But if it's not quite right, I can always come back to it in the painting later on. And now I'm just adding a slightly lighter blue underneath in the sky, just to give it a bit of texture and interest. Oh, there's a bug just landed on it. This is normal when you're painting in the South Island of New Zealand. The bugs get attracted to your paintings. I like when you get bitten to death by sandflies, but it's all part of the fun of painting outdoors. So next I'm going to paint the areas in light on the mountain. So the grass, which is just a very it's a very desaturated kind of yellowy brown colour. So I want to keep my tone quite light, and I don't want to go for any sharp colour at all, because otherwise it will come forward in the painting and then that illusion of distance will be lost. So for the moment I'm just mixing yellow oxide with ultramarine blue, burnt sienna and a tiny bit of quinacridone magenta and titanium white, and it kind of looks like a sort of muddy grey brown colour on my palette. But I'll just start adding this on. It can be a bit of a tricky colour to mix. I'm actually also pretty much using the same colours I used in the shadows as well, which actually makes it more harmonious as the colours are more cohesive. So next I'm going to paint the rock faces at the top of the mountains here. So I'm using a much lighter grey colour, and all I've done is add more titanium white and mix ultramarine blue with burnt sienna. Now at this stage of the painting I'm just trying to get in the basic shapes, because afterwards, once it starts coming together, I can come back and rework some areas if I need to. And the beauty of using liquid is it will have already started drying as well, so it makes it easier to rework some of the areas. Now I can add some more shadows here and there and that kind of thing. Right, let's just paint the top here. I'll add a bit of snow as well. It's autumn here in New Zealand at the moment, so we're starting to get snow on the mountains. The weather's starting to get cooler, and I'd say in probably a few weeks we'll start getting some serious dumps of snow on the mountains. I'm just using nice, just loose brush strokes. Whenever you're plein air painting, you just don't want to worry about detail at all. You just want to get an impression, a feeling of the place. And also plein air paintings make great colour studies if you want to do more detailed studio paintings, which I often do. Now next I'm just going to paint this tree line here on the distant mountains. One thing about looking at the landscape is your eyes can trick you into thinking that colours are there when they're really not. So you might think that this looks green in the distance, but it's actually not. So again, to mix this, I've just used ultramarine blue and burnt sienna with titanium white. And this will look harmonious in the painting, as I'm pretty much just trying to stick to a core group of colours, so there's just common colours throughout the painting, which will make it much more cohesive. Now if I need to, I can make an adjustment to the tone later on in the painting, so even if some of the colours are a little bit too saturated or coming forward, I can just add an opposite to it and just take out the saturation, and then that will make it recede. And I've actually just noticed some more shadows here too, down here. Probably should have got those in a bit earlier, it's all good. So next I'm just painting the green in the distant mountain there and those fields, and what I'm doing is I'm really desaturating the colour, because otherwise if it's too saturated it will jump forward in the painting and then the illusion of depth will be lost. So I'm mainly just mixing yellow oxide and ultramarine blue, and yellow oxide has a much lower chromatic value anyway, so it's not particularly vibrant, which is just what we want for this. And next I'm just going to paint the shadows in these trees in the midground, and I'm just using ultramarine blue mixed with yellow oxide and burnt sienna. So I'm just painting in the shadows, and then that will give the trees more form when I add the areas of the foliage that are in light. Oh, I'm being attacked by sandflies. They bite, and they're kind of like mosquito bites. And next I'm just painting the highlights on the midground trees. Again, I've just mixed it with ultramarine blue, yellow oxide, titanium white and burnt sienna. I don't want these greens to jump forward in the painting, so I'm just keeping them subdued and the colours desaturated. There you go, look at that. Lovely stuff. Right, so next I'm painting the trees in the midground. And it is autumn here at the moment in New Zealand, and the trees are starting to turn colour, so I'm still using the same colours I was using in these trees, so it's yellow oxide, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and I'm also using cadmium yellow deep as well, which increases the saturation of the colour, so it just makes that green a bit more vibrant. If I want, I can also add a bit of phthalo green to the mix, which also kicks up the saturation, but you have to be quite careful with it because you can end up overpowering your green. Okay, so next I'm going to paint the dirt colour of the ridge on the right on the foreground here. So this is just burnt sienna with yellow oxide, titanium white and a bit of ultramarine blue. Just get that in like that because I'll add some foliage to that in a bit. I'll probably paint some of this in the foreground too. A bit over there. Now I'm just going to work on the foreground here, just adding more of the grass. I'm just going to add some richer golden grass here in the foreground. I'll paint some other grass to go with it as well. Now I'm just going to paint that little suggestion of a mountain stream in the distance. Just gives a bit of rhythm to the painting. It's just ultramarine blue, titanium white and burnt sienna just to take some of the saturation out of the blue. Now I'm just going to go back and add some more shadows along here just to bring some of these forms out, especially when I add the foliage and scrub and dead foliage. Just adds interest. Now I'm just forming some of these edges. It's just burnt sienna with ultramarine blue mixed together. And in plein air painting, well, actually any landscape painting, a sharp contrast between dark valleys and light valleys really can make your painting look quite dramatic. So now I'm just going to add some of this foliage in here on the ridge. And this is mixed with ultramarine blue, yellow oxide, burnt sienna, titanium white and cadmium yellow deep. So I just want to give the suggestion of some of these little scrubby plants here, whatever you call them. And I'm just adding bits of burnt sienna here and there, or cadmium yellow deep, just to vary the colour and the texture. Now here in the foreground I'm just starting to add more grass. So I've been mixing cadmium yellow deep with ultramarine blue, tiny bit of phthalo green, yellow oxide, titanium white and a lot of burnt sienna, just to really make it that kind of earthy green colour it looks. Now I'm saving my most saturated green for the foreground. So you're going to find your most saturated colours in the foregrounds, and then as it recedes into the distance the colour becomes desaturated. So the colours look leached of colour. And here again I'm just using a combination of cadmium yellow deep, ultramarine blue, yellow oxide, bit of phthalo green and burnt sienna. Just add some of these clumps of bright green plants here. And I'll add some shadows to it as well, just to sharpen them up. I'm just adding some highlights on the grass. So next I'm going to paint the foliage of the pine trees. It's actually sort of quite a dark green, and I've mixed it with ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, yellow oxide and cadmium yellow deep, and just in places a tiny bit of phthalo green, but I'm not sure if I actually really need it. So I'll come back and rework the shadows anyway in a minute, but I'm just painting it in the direction that the foliage is going. Okay, so now that the painting's coming together, I'm going to start reworking these shadows in the mountains and actually properly forming the shapes. Next I'm just going to sharpen up these shadows in the trees in the midground here. Just using ultramarine blue mixed with burnt sienna, titanium white and quinacridone magenta. It's actually quite a reasonably dark mass here, so I'm just going to re-establish it. That will bring out the form of the trees in front of it as well. Now I can also paint the suggestion of bushes and little trees in the midground. And I'm now just sharpening up these trees and bushes that are on this next mountain here. Now I'm just going to start painting the snow on top of the mountain here. There's not that much snow, but it will certainly add interest to the painting. And what I've done is I've mixed titanium white with a bit of burnt sienna and yellow oxide. So I don't want it completely white because it'll look a bit kind of cold. So this just warms up the snow a little bit, and it also makes it recede as well in the distance so it doesn't jump right forward. Bit of snow on there. I love painting clouds in mountain landscapes. I think it just adds that bit extra to it. Now I'm just reworking the areas in light here on the mountain and just sharpening up the form. Now I'm just adding more of that warm grey to the rocks in the top part of the mountain. So I'm just returning to the trees in the mid-ground, and I'm just going to sharpen up these shadows. Sorry about that noise in the background. Literally as I'm painting, an excavator has just turned up and is starting to dig through the river. I'm also going to add some grass shadows in the foreground here. Okay, and I'm just adding shadows to the foliage in the foreground just to give them some more form. I'm just painting upwards in the direction of the grass here. And now I'm just going to rework these shadows in the pine tree in the foreground here. Okay, so I'm actually getting pretty close to finishing this. So it's now just adding little refinements to it. Now I can sharpen up the form of the tree here by just taking my mountain colour mix and just refining the shape of that tree there. Make it look a bit more like a pine. And now I'm just adding a bit more highlight to the foliage in the pine. It's quite a dark green foliage. I'm adding a lot of ultramarine blue into the mix, along with cadmium yellow deep and a lot of burnt sienna. I'm now just reforming the shape of some of these trees in the midground. And here I'm just adding the suggestion of some branches in the trees. I'm just going to add some highlights just to the top of the water here, just to make it look like there's a bit of sunlight shining on it. Just going to add a tiny bit of shadow in a couple of these clouds. Now this is something I usually save to the end of the painting, is I always come back to the sky and I just refine it, add some lighter tone to the bottom and just add texture to it, just to make it look a bit more interesting, and just to tidy up these edges as well. I'm just going to add a couple of little branches in the pine tree. I reckon that should do it. Really won't need many. Okay, so I think we're done here. So this is where you get to see what your painting actually looks like by turning it around into the sunlight. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget the link below to the written tutorial, the written notes that accompany this video, and also check out my social media sites, which include Instagram, Facebook, Steemit and Minds. I'm going to go and paint another picture, I think. See you in the next video.